Welcome to the Smart Factory.
So yeah, everybody, welcome to the session on the Smart Factory with CERM. Welcome, Geert. CERM is a global solutions provider in MIS. They develop and sell management and automation solutions for the narrow web labeling printing industry. And probably most of you know that they were part of the Heidelberg Group, and that they are sailing again under their own flag since July this year, after a management buyout. And today I'm talking to Geert Van Damme, and we'll be discussing the topics of why the Smart Factory needs powerful MES in order to future-proof your business, of course. So thank you, Geert, for being to joining us, and for your time, and of course your support to INKISH. And I propose that you maybe tell a little bit about yourself and about CERM, and then you just dive into the presentation, and we'll have our conversation about the topic of the day. So take it away, Geert.
Yep. Thank you, Jacques. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank for all of you of being here or watching the movie afterwards. I'm working for CERM for almost 35 years now, so it's a long time, and always in the same business, making MISs for the printing industry and slowly specializing in labels, as I will explain. And let's say I've known a lot of new waves in IT. Remember, from DOS coming to Unix, coming to Windows, and now, let's say, on the eve of a new era, and happy to discuss what we think out of all of these years of practice in bringing, let's say, all stakeholders together, bringing our experience in this discussion panel, and see how we survived and how we think we will be able to survive.
Excellent.
I guess I will share my screen for the presentation.
Okay.
There we go. Share and launch a presentation. You can see it, Jacques?
Yep, fine.
Good. And start discussing the topic, whether smart factories, the factories of the future that you discussed during these sessions, need powerful MIS systems to automate and communicate. Of course, first remark, also other factories need powerful MIS systems, not only smart factories, of course. So what do we do? CERM is a developing company, and we also sell and implement our own MIS system for the label printing industry. This is often called narrow web, but it also includes self-adhesive labels, flexible packaging, tickets, booklet labels, piggyback. So it is an industry working for the industry, mainly for the packaging industry. If we look at the famous pyramid of data coming from below in the factory, in what you have discussed already, industrial IoT, Internet of Things, so the sensors of all devices, and then the MES on top, manufacturing execution system. You can see the names on the right of the slide, is the computers driving those machines and the software driving the computers of those machines. For example, job ticket is at this level. Then you have an ERP on top, where you have the business, meaning sales orders coming in, invoices going out, warehouse management, scheduling, and on the very top is reporting. Well, if you look at an automobile industry, for example, you will see all of these layers being represented by different software. They have different software for each of those layers, and MIS is, in fact, a conglomerate of those three top layers. Not because we are so special, as in this world, we as a software company, but because the printing industry everywhere in the world is a lot of small to medium factories. Automobile would be a factory of 5,000 people. I never saw personally a 5,000 people printing plant on one location. I do not even know whether it exists, but you can think of something on average 50 people. And that is why we needed to build a software that would do those top layers together. And that is why we have a special name is MIS. And exactly this role was given to us to come to the dialogue we're having here in the year 2000, in the early years of JDF, in the white paper. This task to be, with Tolkien's words, the one ring to rule them all, is exactly the role that was given to MIS. So you can see the top layer MIS, and you will see the communication with that bottom layer of computers and devices to pre-press. You can see communication going back, and then management information systems or services giving information to press, receiving information back, and going to post-press. That was the initial model. Special in this model is that you see bi-directional communication. You see as well no arrows between pre-press and press and press and post-press. Of course, all devices could, as they called, subscribe to messages of pre-press or press to be informed, but the meaning of the model was not that pre-press and post-press would start communicating without MIS knowing. And I know, of course, that many of the existing MIS systems never succeeded to fulfill this role, but this was the initial role. So the model, in fact, gave that responsibility to MIS, and that is exactly what we did. During all those years since 2000, being 20 years, we created a lot of partnerships with industry leaders in various domains. These were JDF communication, like with machine builders, but this was also PuppyNet communication with paper suppliers, or even let's say dedicated XML data exchange to, for example, ink dispensers or tool builders, etc. But all in all, we came to a very interesting conglomerate and partnership to all of these industry leaders for our customers. And it works. The best show we ever did was on Label Expo. It was called Automation Arena, and still grateful to Tarsus that they gave us that opportunity. And in that live show of 45 minutes, we brought a web order, so the customer ordered things on the web to the finished goods delivered at one person in the audience in 45 minutes. So it just took 45 minutes for those orders to be delivered and invoiced, but was considered to be less important than the delivery, but they were invoiced as well. And we used 5 different labels produced digitally. One of those labels was completely new, and we put, to show that, the name of that volunteer out of the audience as valuable info in that label. On the other hand, there were 2 shrink sleeve produced rolls on a conventional line. This was the setup. You could see here the audience in the middle, all was live. There was MIS and pre-press, let's say, on stage as being the 2 data providers, MIS for administration, pre-press for the graphical data. At the left-hand side, there was a digital press with inline inspection, inline rewinder, and waste removal. At the right-hand side, we had a conventional press with inline unwinder, rewinder, camera inspection. We had an offline finishing device, and then for the sleeves, we had a seamer and a rewinder, and then we had a core cutter, because that is an interesting object, and I will talk about this a little later. The partners were these. All had 2 days to set up their machine, the network, the computers, 2-3 rehearsals live we did only, since there was no opportunity to build this before the show. So we did 2, 3 rehearsals, and then the show went on. So all off-the-shelf products and software were shown. So JDF, despite what some people are saying, works. What did we do? We included job changes. Yes.
Geert, can I just get a minute?
Of course.
Because I personally, I don't see the slideshow at the moment. So
anymore?
I'm not sure if the others can see your screen share.
I will stop sharing.
Maybe it's just my connection, but it's just today.
I will stop sharing and then go sharing again.
Better safe than sorry.
No problem. You better. So there.
Yeah.
And then one moment. Let me take back from the slide I had. You can see the slide now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jacques,
Thanks,
for reminding me. So what we did in that 45 minutes is we did not make it easy on ourselves. So we included job changes. Both presses were printing something else before we started the show. So we included job changes to show how fast those changes could be done, even on that conventional press, equipped with all wells and whistles. Everything was instructed by MIS. The communication was bidirectional with all partners. We had full traceability, so we could show the audience that the barcode of the paper roll used to print was known on the finished roll in the database. Everything was stored in the database, for costing, for production report. The only thing we did not do was we did not produce the flexo plates. I think it was rather impressive, and to be able to just give one small example and not start enumerating everything we did, I will talk about a core cutter. To show the audience how simple automation can be. We do not always need to go on the top level of everything to make it interesting, efficient, and productive for everybody. Let me explain what a core cutter does. So this is a roll of labels, in this case, blank labels. You see that within that roll, there is a kind of tube, which we call a core, mostly made of carton, to be able to hold that, let's say, those meters of label. But of course, all labels have a different size, shape, width, so there can be larger, smaller cores. You understand that a printing company will not have all of these types of cores in stock. So what they do, they order tubes of standard widths and thicknesses and material, of course, and then they cut the cores for a specific job on a core cutting machine. Here is just, let's say, the picture of the machine of WLE we have used. And how does it work in automation terms? Well, rather simple. In fact, there is a little printer, a label printer, that is printing labels out of the back office. So the back office sees the schedule of this afternoon and prints all core identification labels of the jobs that need to be cut. The operator just prints, hits one button, and then one label is coming out. So every time he hits the button, the next label is coming out, even though the operators in the back office asked to print 20 labels. So the label comes one by one. The second thing he does is he takes the label and scans the barcode you can see there of the label. Scanning that barcode orders the computer behind that barcode scanner to retrieve the latest information of the cutting job. Next thing to do for the operator is, of course, load the appropriate basic large core material, since there are many types of material, and just hit the button to start cutting. Next thing, the machine starts cutting. There is a little box here where all the cut cores are catched, and the operator sticks the labels on that box for identification for the next step. On that label is, where do I need to put this box? On which winding machine will we wind this job? So in fact, it is a very simple but very time-saving automation process we have here. It is not a big world. It is not about a setup of plates of printing presses. It is a core cutter. And this core cutter was record selling on those two label expos because it is so simple and could be integrated with MIS in a very simple way.
Yeah,
That's just for the example.
That is mind-blowing because everyone's thinking about printed materials, you know, when someone is doing automatization. And this is actually a perfect example of how raw material can be included, or treating raw materials can be included in an Industry 4 or in a smart factory, especially if you do labels, of course. So that's a great example.
Yeah. Exactly. It is, in fact, if you look at it, it is rather simple, but it is only because we work together with the customer and the core cutter and ourselves and thinking creatively in how we could optimize this process that we came to this solution. So, to continue, Jacques, and the question you asked in preparing this demo, is this now JDF in practice? Yes, it is. Of course, it is not only JDF. We also use other standards with, for example, paper suppliers. I've mentioned it. We used papinet.org. But the main thing, and I would like to share some of our, let's say, 20 years of experience here in the next slides. The main thing is we had to leave our developers or engineers' desk and get our feet wet. Go into practice, talk to customers, talk to partners, and come to solutions that really save time or reduce waste, more than talking about the theory and the models and the language and the let's say the big round table discussions. And I will give, if you allow me, some of our experiences which I thought were interesting to share. The first thing is that we worked after some years. We learned that we needed long-term partnerships with the other industry leaders and that we have to focus on results for the customer. It is not us partners who will invent things. It is the customer who will lead us and guide us and tell us, yes, it is interesting. So we always worked around a customer project because the customer was the real measure to success and usability of the concept. When we start to talk to a new partner, we go there and listen to what he is capable of, since we want to have a first and fast and simple success. It doesn't pay off when you need to work 3 years together before there is something. You need to be able to go a little faster, then it pays off. Customers are enthusiastic, the partner gets enthusiastic, and you go further. Don't forget that some of the machine vendors have a HMI, which is a human machine interface. It's a little computer which they did not develop themselves to drive the machines. Can be third-party software, so you should take care that also others need to be involved sometimes, and sometimes there is just a limited interface and they do not have the possibility to change that right away. Do not forget as well, remember big paper suppliers or big machine vendors. One vendor can acquire another, both working on different platforms, different SAP or ERP systems, with different production plants. So it is possible that your automation will just work for one type of machine and not for another. It is necessary to talk to each other and check what both are capable of. And then from there, work in steps and improve permanently. I will even go further. Whenever your partner has new plans, it would be interesting to discuss them together before they are executed. I was once around a table about the design of a new machine, and I tried to tell them that machine engineering, so from the design to the first prototype, will take as long as the software engineering. So do not wait to discuss software and what you want to do to drive the machine together with the machine engineering, and do not wait until the machine is printing before you think about software, since it will take as long. If that process at the left-hand side would take, for example, 3 years, then the other process will as well take 3 years. So start sitting around the table from the moment there are new plans. This is just an advice. That is the way we try to work with our partners, and that is how it became successful. The second advice is try to manage what is called change orders. One of the criticism towards JDF and JMF is that it works fine for new jobs, but it doesn't work for job changes. Well, I think that is not, let's say, the mistake of the language, but rather the mistake of the printers in being unable sometimes to manage change orders. First of all, everybody knows that automation only comes after standardization. And if I look at the success of web-to-print companies, you will see that they first of all reduced the offer to become successful. They just print on 5 papers, 4 colors, 3 quantities, 2 sizes, 1 delivery address, and in the end they have 0 open invoices, just having the game from 5 to 0. But what is more important for me is when the customer is wrong on the web to print, he cannot call to change. He just needs to reorder. So they, in order to automate, they just disallowed change orders. So think of that. And now they run away with all the simple jobs, and the other printers just remain there with the complex and changing customers. The second thing is, we do not longer send JDFs to machines from the moment a job is created. As you could see at the core cutter, we ask the machine to ask for the next job instructions. So the operator has, for example, the schedule on his screen. He hits the job which is next on his schedule, and at the moment he hits start, then the latest, greatest JDF is sent to his machine. That means that all changes between the start of the job, launching the job, and start of print are let's say, not known to the press. It just knows the last information, and that avoided a lot of those changes. Of course, we do that then by barcode reader and not by sending around job tickets with complete instruction, and they always have the most recent information. Next thing, which is a difficult discussion sometimes, is we say, as being the one ring to rule them all, that a lot of changes can only be handled by MIS operators, or let's say software items that can influence MIS data. As a simple example, a request to change the size of a label from a customer to a prepress operator can easily be handled by the prepress operator. He can just change the size, full stop. But he will probably be unable to check the consequences. Who will order the wider paper? Who will order the new die-cut tool? Will the customer be prepared to pay a higher price, and will the delivery be 1 day later? Is all of this possible? This is a judgment, a decision that can only be taken by the persons who mostly operate MIS. So do not think that computers can take some of these decisions. Computers cannot take the decision that the customer will pay a higher price. The customer will have to say yes, and in some cases even send a written purchase order signed. Next experience is more about what we did. Is we try to standardize our own software as much as we could. The most important probably is that we always started at the customer from a prototype. So the first project is considered a prototype, and we always took the prototype and then build it in our standard software as a next release version for all the customers. And we also changed at the customers, as the first customer, the prototype to our standard release. The purpose, of course, is to avoid that tailor-made things at the customer can never evolve. IT is evolution. Automation is evolution, is continuous progress, and that is what we want to guarantee. Secondly, we always try to follow standards like JDF or PAPINAT to be able to have a next press vendor after the first and the next with almost the same interface. And the last advice is that whenever we install a new customer, for example, without a pre-press workflow, we always have in the back of our minds that later he will probably install a pre-press workflow. And that will make it more easy later to integrate, since we already, let's say, presume it will be there one day. So we standardize our implementations within Outlook on the future. And as a last advice, I would advise everybody in automation to accept the famous Pareto 80-20 rule. Do not try to automate the remaining 20. I would rather advise you to get rid of that 20% and only do the 80% type of jobs. Just the same with, we have, let's say, customers with very large encyclopedias of rules for exceptions. I can only advise to get rid of the exceptions. Give the exceptions to your competitor, then if you want to automate. Just as a small example, a booklet label specialist, and you see a booklet label here, he can standardize and automate better than in, let's say, regular label printer doing booklet labels every now and then, since for him that will be exceptions, and for the first one it will be the rule. So automating the rule is much more easy than automate the exceptions. So here were our 4 experiences I wanted to share with you before I come to, let's say, the questions I was asked to answer about API technology. And will that
exactly here, because one of the questions that a lot of us have on our minds is because everyone's talking about APIs, and even Morten yesterday had a great session about APIs as well. But do you think API technology will be capable of replacing JDF /X or as a definition format? Because I think that's where a lot of them are heading, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a very important question and very interesting. And I'm grateful that INKISH is spending so much attention to this, since, of course, it is bringing in new words and bringing in new expectations. Let me try to come back and perhaps overlap a little with Morten, but I think it is important to explain how I look at it. Application programming interfaces, APIs, are for me today's best alternative to exchange information between software apps. And I will call them apps instead of solutions or packages or whatever, apps. And we can share this. It's just, let's say, a public video on the internet, and it is about booking a plane. To make it very simple and clear for everybody is, you know, that you can just log into whatever British Airways, for example, and book a flight on the website of British Airlines. But today you can do more. You can also go to Google and search for a flight. Well, Google search a flight is using APIs to do so. Let me try to explain. The first is British Airways, here called Fly Airways, and it's a snapshot out of their video where you as a user will enter your where you're coming from, where you go to, when you want to travel, when you want to come back, how many persons, which class, which luggage, something like that. Those questions are asked to the computer of Fly Airways, and you will get back the possibilities on the exact days and the price. This is not, let's say, what I mean with APIs. This is just simple user to computer. There can be user to computer communication. What is APIs now? It is in the middle is that Google here called Canoe, and there are 5 airline companies. So you will type your questions in that canoe, the same, when, where, how many people, class, and that canoe will communicate with computer API language to all of those airline companies and will get you back the cheapest, the fastest, the less time, the most luggage, etc. So the computer of Canoe will communicate to the computers or the software of the others via APIs without you having to type in all of those 5 individual computers. That is a very simple example of API technology. And today, in fact, I need to conclude that JDF, JMF is, in theory, API technology. It is, and when the printer hits the button, I will start the next job out of his schedule, automatically the JDF will be communicated from the MIS to the press and things will get running. So it is in fact API technology. Only the misunderstanding today is that today there are new APIs available like the REST API, and definitely we would love JDF to evolve to REST API, since that is a far more easy communication than the XML exchange as we do it for JDF. But in principle, Jacques, JMF JDF is API technology, but today there is a more recent REST API evolution that is something that JDF should follow. More important is the second thing. API technology, with the German word an sich or as such, cannot integrate the graphical arts industry or a complete industry without discussing and agreeing on a data set like JDF, JMF. And I will try to continue with that airplanes to explain what I want to say. It is just a technology. So let's see how this book a flight app like that Canoe will work when we will bring more alternative cheap flight apps. This is our Canoe in the middle. And next to Canoe, there is the cheaptickets.com and there is the google.com, and there are others like the purple, the green, and the orange. And those are four cheap flight apps. They all will interrogate an airplane or an airline company, about prices. Just they do not communicate with exactly the same APIs. Some will be Russian, some will be English, some will be talking about cabin luggage or hand luggage. Some will be having 4 classes instead of 3. Some will have the option to take your dog with you, others will not. So the language or the content of the APIs can be different for all 4. And you will see immediately and understand what the issue is. That airline company here will need to use translators or mapping software and will need to correspond and communicate with all those 4 differently. And that is exactly what is happening today in the graphical arts industry. How many pre-press workflows do you think we count worldwide? 20, 30, 40? How many press vendors do we have? 50, 100? Post-press vendors, paper suppliers, web-to-print systems, MIS systems, subcontractors, tool makers, trade shops. If all of those would invent their own API, we will not be able to work. So I just checked this morning, 1,500 exhibitors at Drupa, 1,600 at Fachbach, 600 at Label Expo. So we are about 1,000 different vendors in this industry. I think the API technology is great, but please don't just update the technology, speak about the language. Quand je continue maintenant, Jacques, en français, tu vas me comprendre. La moitié de nos auditeurs ne le font pas.
Mm-hmm.
I just talked a little bit of French. Some of you will understand, others can't. The webinar is the same. The content is the same. The tool is the same, but the language is different. So please talk about the language as well.
Mm. Yes, that's very interesting. And maybe here at INKISH, maybe Morten can initiate it maybe with his vast relations all over the world and
Exactly.
INKISH in general. So maybe we should start kind of a call out to vendors and stakeholders, Morten, to start like a quest to deliver a kind of a industry Esperanto, you know, the uniform language that was put out there, and maybe to get a uniform standardized JDF API type of language, you know, that everyone, the thousands that you talk about, can talk, and to get like a uniform language then.
But Jacques and Geert, I think that is actually the challenge. If you look at JDF and XJDF, that was the purpose of it, was to generate Esperanto for the printing industry, and I think that especially with XJDF, maybe they have come one step closer anyway, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I will add one more layer here, since of course API is just one component. The other component is very important. Is we can go to the cloud now, and the question is, will that then be the solution to simplify the communication? And I would say yes, it is terrific. So today, Jacques, we make a connection to a new HP press, since in connecting to the HP Print OS cloud platform. We do not longer connect to the press itself. That is very easy. The procedure to connect is always the same, and the connection always works. There is no hiccup, no cabling, no networking, no protection, whatever. Everything we have is in that easy connection. And on top of that, all presses we connect to give exactly the same information. So there we talk about one Esperanto for Print OS, regardless whether it is a 6,000 press or an 8,000 press or the new V12 press to come. Mm-hmm. Very good. On the other hand, I would say no. No, and again, you will hear me coming for the same reasons. There is not only the HP cloud, there is as well a Bobst cloud announced, and there is a Heidelberg cloud. Just two examples, since there are coming many more clouds, and probably we will have 1,000 clouds, all with their own set of APIs. And that is exactly, and I will just make one more example or one more phrase. If you ask me where this is all going to, unfortunately, I'm positive in what we realized. I'm positive in what JDF brought, and I'm hopeful in what API and cloud will come. But if I look at how it is evolving today and the initiatives that are taken today, I'm afraid that we will have to connect to more communication tools and more data sets in the year to come, since there will be many different cloud platforms with many different APIs and data sets, and still many devices that will stay local and that we need to connect anyhow. So unless, and please help me there, we are just a very small shrimp, unless there is a new JDF API initiative supported by all, or unless one of the standards will win, like Acrobat PDF, luckily for the graphical arts industry did, we will just stick there. And indeed, automation will only be possible with a powerful MIS, and unfortunately, we will even need to work harder. And I will just put a few examples. We all know that when we travel abroad, we need to have those power plug things. And it is such a shame that in this Western world, there is not one plug that fits all. And still, the other end of the cable to our laptops, we made the same mistake. Every laptop has its own connection for power. So at the left-hand side of the cable, we need those power plugs, and at the other side of the cable, we need those type of connectors as well. And even newer things like power cables for mobile phones are not even standardized. And that is exactly the same problem we are facing. And I would love to start here on this forum a new JDF initiative, a JDF API initiative to do so. If you want to know more about us before we start the Q&A, you can find this on the CERM Academy.
Great. Thank you so much, Geert, for this very good presentation.
You're welcome.
And yeah, maybe Morten, you said you would have some interesting questions for Geert.
Please do.
I see him on your lips.
If not so much, I think you have covered not only your own software and solution, but also some of the challenges that obviously you see as a vendor on the software side. A few questions I always have when it comes to, for example, MIS systems, because you've been talking about the flow, but I think that may be important for me at least. I thought the MIS system is also the one that gives you the prices, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Calculates the prices.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, because one of the mantras also as part of the smart factory is also that you sometimes dive into the different pricing models. Should you have like full cost models? Should you have variable cost models? Should you have cost models that are based on break-even points like that? And I'm just wondering, if you look at maybe not only your system, but also from the demand of your customers in general, do you think there's a diverse need for different cost models also when it comes to the narrow web kind of estimating procedures?
Well, you see as well there the different cost models, and every company uses his own model. In fact, those cost models are just a theoretical framework to see what an average job would cost. The purpose is then to compare with reality and then adapt your model to see how can we go. The most important change I could see in the last years is that luckily most printers start to get away from that one estimate and that one job. One can be an exception. You should look, and that's also what Anthony said earlier this morning, you should start to look at your company, and you have to make profit with the company, and there can be one bad job, and you do not need to bother. You need to think of your company all together, and you need to start combining jobs, and you cannot make combined prices, but you need to start removing waste by schedule smarter, and those things are, once you have your cost model, please use it and stick to it and don't change it every day, but evaluate it year over year whether the components are correct.
I agree, but the reason I'm asking is because if you look at for example, a lot of printing companies, at least in the commercial print space, are using absorption cost models. And the problem is that the absorption cost model is based on your ability to predict utilization of equipment rather than just having a markup of variable cost. And therefore, I'm a little bit curious whether that also applies to narrow web. I think that maybe for narrow web printers, they have more steady and regular kind of customers compared to maybe some of the commercial printers who have very often a lot of different kind of objectives because the utilization is maybe smaller. I don't know, but that was why I was asking, because I was a little bit curious about that model.
Yeah, let's say that, of course, since narrow web printers and also, for example, folding carton printers or book printers or any specialist will have a smaller variety of things. So his cost units and it cost drivers will be more simple than a printer who is doing and books and business cards and sometimes a label. So, but the difficulty is in the non-specialization, and I can only recommend to specialize.
Yeah, we have actually also in many of articles and films recommended that to some printers at least. So I totally agree with that one. The other thing that I missed a little bit from your presentation, maybe I heard everything, but I also had lunch at the same time. So maybe it was in a tube. I was thinking that one of the objectives of this week with the Smart Factory and some of the things that have been touched upon in various presentations is also the ability to receive sensor data in order to understand productivity objectives. And do you also, I mean, of course, it depends on whether the device is able to connect with an API or deliver data through other services, I understand that. But are your software also capable of interpreting these data?
No, we chose not to go there. We think it is someone else's job to collect data on the press. We hoped for a time that every press after 20 years of JDF would be capable of sending their own information in a simple JMF file to us. Turns out that 20 years was not enough to get there, but we do place some sensors on older presses for the paper roll consumption, since that is necessary for us to have that traceability, and otherwise we could not guarantee this. But someone should take care of those sensors, and I know that there are already specialized companies dedicated to putting sensors on any industrial machine and delivering a file of data afterwards, but we never considered this to be our job.
Okay, but the reason why I was asking was a little bit in extension to the pricing models, because I mean, basically, if you have an absorption cost model, I would take that the effectiveness of the printing machine could dynamically give the printer a better full cost calculation. So I was just thinking that in a modern ERP/MIS system, I thought it was important to get that information inside
exactly.
the models.
Yes. So if you look at the most advanced presses driven by more advanced computers, they will give us every detail, and then the customer can analyze better. So I think that definitely in the narrow web world, we see more and more, and our customers, we try to push them there to only buy presses that can give that feedback, or as much as possible feedback. For me, that will become a selection criterion for new presses. It will no longer be tolerated in an industry like this, evolving to Industry 4.0, that there are still presses delivered new which cannot give any data. So I think that is a second thing we need to learn here. Please, people, stop buying presses that do not give data back. Point. Full stop.
We got a question from Adrian Steele. He's asking Geert, what label manufacturing processes will be easiest to automate? An example, core cutting, and what will be the hardest to automate? An example, digital printing, maybe.
Well, automation of digital printing is easier because you can print information next to the product you need to print. You can print barcodes in, lead out, as we call it on roll. So lead in is the first part before you start a job. You can print information. You can print barcodes. You can print frames. You can print even, let's say, the address where you need to deliver it to. So digital is very agile in printing information and can even automate then the finishing process, which comes afterwards. So there, conventional is somewhat more difficult. But I think the most, let's say, easy to automate will be digital print, because everything is driven by computers. The most difficult to automate will be older machines and conventional machines that need manual setup and cannot be driven by a computer yet.
I thought you meant it was about the old people working in the printing companies, that would be difficult to automate.
Well, people will always be difficult to automate. So if we look, for example, at the top of the pyramid, that BI, that business intelligence, those data in those reports are only reliable if there are enough people disciplined to enter everything which is necessary. So discipline for people is very difficult, but for machines, it's rather easy to be disciplined.
That's
and
great.
That is nothing to do with age. I'm sorry.
No. That I totally understand that. Sometimes I feel so young, and sometimes I feel so old. I tell you.
Yeah.
Geert, sorry, maybe just a quick question there, because we're touching on it. So as MIS, as Morten said, like in in general, printing companies, etc. This here, you're in a niche market, as you mentioned, for narrow web label printers. Do you have the impression that maybe in that segment they are still a bit behind, I would say, with their investments? Do you think there is less out there of automated flexo presses, or am I wrong in that objective?
In one perspective, you are correct. Let's say, in being at Heidelberg and seeing the number of presses made there is not one vendor out there who made in his life as many presses as Heidelberg and spent as many time in automating those machines. In the narrow web label world, definitely in the flexo world, there are many vendors and also many small vendors. And of course, if every individually need to make the same investment to automate, you know that the result will be, sorry, we can't get there. So perhaps we need to wait for some more consolidation there, unfortunately, to get there, which is also the fact in MIS is, by the way, between brackets, not mainly in our world, but then mainly in the commercial print world.
Okay.
I think it was great answers, great presentation. I'm not trying to stress anything. I'm just saying that in 7 minutes, 8 minutes, we have the last session of today. However, that is the only pre-recorded sessions we have, so it doesn't really matter if we postpone it like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. However, I think it could be interesting also for you to know, Geert, that is the next session we have is with a guy from the US. His name is Diego Diaz, and he is maybe one of the most clever guys in the industry in actually implementing, and he every time he hear the words API, he buys. So just send him a request saying API in the headline, he will buy it, I'm sure.
That's interesting.
Well, maybe on the last note, it's good to hear that maybe we have to shout out to the Ghent work group then, to get the work done on a more universal API type of solution.
Exactly.
Or maybe we get in touch with Adobe. Who knows? They maybe come up with the solution then.
Yeah.
But anyway, Geert, it was a great talking to you. It was very interesting topics. I hope that everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. And
it was fantastic.
Anyway, thank you for the support again, and
you're welcome.
See you soon in person. So I thank you very much for the session.
Always welcome. Thank you very much for being here.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Geert. Bye bye.
Yep.